I think if I were starting over, I would spend more time in prayer. I'm not confessing that I haven't spent time in prayer, but I would spend more time in prayer. I would make it a greater foundation. I've come to the place where I do that, and I've come to value prayer and worship time much more than I did when I was young. So much effort I put in out of myself when I was young, and as I've grown older, I've learned to give it more to Him. But I have walked with the Lord all my life. I helped my dad in ministry. He was a pastor. And so I grew up in this, but I grew into relationship with God. And when I was about 21, I suddenly had this season of the Lord thrust upon me by the Holy Spirit, where I couldn't eat, sleep, work. I couldn't do anything normally. And I spent about 2 weeks in that place. And I played some of the early worship music on a phonograph. And I played it until I wore the needle through the vinyl. But I just spent that time in worship, and that time really changed my life. I've had other times that were very special. That time I look back on as a turning point in my life. At about age 21, 22, those 2 weeks I'll never forget.
Talk to me a little bit about Keith Green.
Keith Green, I only had limited opportunity to actually visit with him, but his ministry impacted my life greatly. Keith Green, in the midst of the Jesus movement, taught the message that's going forth today in the current Jesus movement, and that is holiness, fear of God, no compromise, and it resonated with me so powerfully. That's what the Holy Spirit was working in me, and really He spoke what the Holy Spirit was doing in that generation. You had all of these hippies out there it was the age of the hippies, and some people probably see this don't even know the term, but there are all these people that were flower children, and they really wanted to be different, and they were all alike. They weren't different at all. Well, Keith Green began to speak to that generation, and he and others were instrumental in turning that generation toward Jesus. And then it was amazing to see what happened during that time, because there was a generation that started crying out to the Lord and accepting this message, which really is what people were looking for. They were looking for this no compromise type of message. They were looking for the message of holiness. They wanted something that was bigger than what they were seeing in the corruption around them. And it resonated, and Keith did an awesome work and touched so many people's lives. Back during those days, we saw people saved. The Jesus movement touched every town, every village, every city. I mean, it just touched the whole nation. Every night on the national news, you would see reports of it, showing people being baptized in the ocean and in swimming pools, and there were literally the national news media took note of what was happening. It was so huge, and it just grew from a grassroots movement to something that became so powerful, that brought in the contemporary Christian music, gave birth to that out at Calvary Chapel. It was just an amazing time, and Keith was huge in it and huge in my life. My dad was raised in poverty, extreme poverty, back during Depression days. He picked cotton as a boy. He told me a story one time that they had nothing to eat. I mean, literally nothing. And his mom was praying. She was just asking God for food to feed her boys. And a couple hours later, after she had prayed and called them to prayer, he said that the stingiest, greediest man, and he was known for that, in town, came walking down their dirt road, pulling a red wagon. and it was filled with food. And he came up and he said, "Miss Beulah, I don't understand, but I know I'm supposed to bring this food to you and your boys. And so here you go." And Dad said he never forgot that. He could hear his grandmother praying across the cotton field, crying out to God at midnight for him and his brothers. And my dad was called into the ministry, got saved, was called into the ministry when he was 16. And he began preaching, and he was an evangelist, saw such successful meetings, and then became a pastor and was a wonderful pastor. Just had a heart of gold. Loved Jesus with all of his heart, and it reflected in my dad. It reflected powerfully. The face of Jesus was in my dad's face.